I'd love to come back to that. But yeah, let me just deal with that. I'm going to make sure that I'm calm and reflective for this talk. Maybe you can help me. So I'm going to activate my vagus nerve to make sure that my brain knows that I'm in a safe space and that none of you are going to try and eat me. I'm going to need your help with this, please, if that's okay. What I'm going to do is take a deep breath into my stomach, and I'm going to take 2 more breaths without exhaling. So 3 deep breaths into my stomach, into my chest, and really fill it up with a big sigh. And so that I don't feel silly, I'm going to ask you to do that with me. Are you ready? That feels better. Does it feel better? So what I was doing there was biologically moving from the fear circuitry in my brain into the hope circuitry. That fear mindset, that fear circuitry in my brain is programmed to see potential danger and threats. It triggers something that all of us have since we were living in caves, our fight or flight response. It's focused on the short term, and it's focused on self-interest. And so what I've learned is that for democracy and human rights, we can't live in that space. We need to move into a more hopeful space where we think of common interest, where we're reflective and calm. Above all, we care about other people, where we have compassion and empathy. So I define hope as the idea that tomorrow can be better than today if we take action. Really, hope is a cognitive function. It's a way of thinking. It's actual circuitry in our brain that activates when we're planning for the future and when we act on those plans. But where my man is actually, I forgot to say who I am, but I'm Thomas. You can call me a hope guy. Very important though, hope is very different from positivity or optimism. I'm quite grumpy actually, but I believe that change is possible. So I developed this approach when I was working at Amnesty International because I believe that's what we need to do to save democracy and human rights. And it's not just enough to protect them from the threats they face, but we actively try and build a society built on love and kindness, basically. So that's why we talk about hope-based. It's about basing our action on the change we want to see happen. And that's based on an insight from neuroscience that we learn attitudes and behavior from what we see around us. If we want change to happen, we have to put that change in front of people. I believe if we do that, we can make compassion common sense. That sounds a bit naive, maybe. You know what I think is naive is thinking we can keep going where we are in this world without radically increasing our capacity for empathy and mutual understanding. With this flood of AI, fake news, content coming that's going to primarily be used to try and turn us against each other and spread hate and fear and division, how on earth are we going to process all that if our mindset is one of fear, where we assume the worst of other people? And so when we receive all these lies, fake videos, we're primed to believe the worst in others. How are we going to protect our planet if, rather than working together as a species and caring about other human beings and other beings, we're too busy haggling as nations at a table? How are we going to fix the economy if we think it's okay to have super rich and super poor and that it's their fault? How are we going to end war if we just hate the other side and can't believe that they have any capacity for forgiveness or change? None of these things we can do unless we have more empathy. Let's do a quick show of hands. Hands up who thinks the biggest change in the next 10 years is going to be artificial intelligence. Not as much as I thought. Hands up who thinks the biggest change is going to be climate change. Hands up who thinks it's going to be populism and the rise of authoritarianism. Okay, I think we've got covered most of them. Hands up who thinks it's going to be radically new levels of empathy. Okay, let's see if we can change that. So we're talking a lot about AI and how it's going to affect us. But we're not talking a lot about EI, emotional intelligence, social intelligence, our understanding of how we as human beings actually function, how our genes, our hormones, brain chemicals, how society around us shapes how we actually act and treat each other. Sometimes when we talk about AI, we talk about the printing press in terms of the change it's going to bring about. But when it comes to the level of understanding we have about neuroscience and psychology, when it comes to the level of sophistication of our institutions in society, based on those insights, we're actually still in the era before we discovered that we revolve around this stuff, Copernican evolution. That's how little we've actually built institutions based on how we humans actually make decisions. There's this idea that we're all rational decision makers who just mechanically follow the law and do what we're told. The vast majority of our decision making is subconscious and emotional. The way our societies treat people, the way we treat difference, the way we treat people who come from different places, the way we treat animals, we're basically living in caves. So we've got work to do. But there's a lot we can do. Let's talk about what a hope-based revolution might look like instead of the AI revolution that's coming. First of all, what we can do, and I think human rights and civic education have a massive role to play here in making sure that we can grow this emotional and social intelligence. We can teach self-regulation. That breath work I just did to calm myself, that was a biological function, but it makes me more reflective, makes me more calm. Irish rugby players, before they go out onto a rugby field to smash each other to bits, do breath work to make sure that they're calm and can make smart decisions under pressure. If that's the case, why aren't we doing that at the start of sessions of parliament or just in school? There are all these tools for self-awareness and self-regulation that we could be using so that we just are better citizens. And then empathy. Neuroscience tells us that empathy and kindness are muscles we can train. If you see someone being kind to someone else, our brain processes it as if someone's being kind to us, and then that makes us more likely to be kind. So empathy and kindness can be trained. It's not something we take for granted. Imagine if we actually used human rights civic education as spaces to train our and other people's empathy. We could create new rituals of democracy, new practices, new habits to build in society our capacity to understand people who see the world differently, to just care about our fellow human beings. What would that look like? It might be for the environment, it might be groups of people going bird watching together. For migration, it might be dinners where hosts and newcomers come together and learn the wonderful power of encountering difference and changing our minds. I think of Amnesty International. It began as just people sitting down and writing letters to a political prisoner. I promise if you try it yourself, the campaign is every December, just sit and write a letter to another human being and see the world through their eyes. It changes your own brain. It literally rewires your brain. This sounds like a lot, but here's why we can do it. We are wired for connection. Human beings are social animals. We've evolved to function as a group. We just haven't tapped into it yet. And we're still in the very early days of the internet. But the point is, we can't just let it happen to us. The institutions, the apps, the media around us have been designed for profit and power. They haven't been designed for empathy. Imagine if we designed new ones. So much money and resources going into spreading hate and division. Imagine if we put a fraction of that into cultivating love and kindness. How do we do that? I developed Hope Base as a really practical approach that anyone can use to find the hope in their story. The way it starts is by all of us changing our own minds in order to change other people. We have to put out our vision and our values of how things could be, how we want things to be if we're going to bring about that change. So, you guys already raised this question, really important. In such dark times, where do we find hope? It starts by looking inside. Hope is in us. Thank you.